AJ2.4 Podcast, Episode 28. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, wants to tighten the approval process for new vaccine products. Under the new policy, vaccines will be required to show data from randomized clinical trials, RCTs, against placebos. This requirement has raised concerns among vaccine experts about the timely availability of future vaccines. However, in response to the recent measles outbreak in Texas, Secretary Kennedy recommended using vitamin A instead of vaccines to treat measles infections. He claimed that vitamin A can, quote, dramatically reduce deaths from measles. There is no evidence from RCTs conducted in American populations supporting this claim. So how should treatments for diseases be evaluated to best protect public health? One leading expert, Dr. Rob Califf, former commissioner of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, explains in a blog why RCTs are essential, though there are exceptions. Now let's listen to Gemini's discussion of Dr. Califf's blog on RCT methodology.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're digging into something that's been talked about a lot lately, placebo-controlled trials for vaccines. Specifically, when are they actually appropriate?
Yeah, it sounds simple, but it's really not.
Not at all. And we're going to explore this using a commentary from Dr. Rob Califf.
He spent decades deep in clinical trials, regulations, so he brings a really practical, informed viewpoint. It's not just theory for him. He's been in the thick of these decisions.
Exactly. So our mission today is to really unpack Dr. Califf's perspective. Let's start with the basics then. Why are randomized controlled trials, RCTs, generally seen as, well, the gold standard for medical evidence?
Fundamentally, it's about proving cause and effect. Dr. Califf points this out. An RCT randomly puts people into groups. One gets the new thing, the vaccine here, and the other gets a comparator.
A comparator? Like a sugar pill? Or maybe something else?
Could be. It might be a placebo, yeah. Or sometimes it's an existing treatment. Or maybe just the usual care people would get anyway.
And the random part, that's the magic, isn't it?
That's totally the key. It minimizes the chance that other differences between the groups, like overall health, age, lifestyle, what we call confounders, mess up the results.
So you could be more confident the vaccine itself is causing the effect you see.
Exactly. And it gives you a clear starting point, a time zero, to track effects properly.
Makes sense. But Dr. Califf also says RCTs aren't the answer to everything in medicine.
That's a really crucial point. You know, practical limits, sometimes ethical limits. I mean, we just can't do an RCT for every question.
Right.
He mentions this idea of a learning health system as sort of the future goal, where ideally, routine healthcare data itself helps us learn and improve treatments continuously.
So research becomes part of regular care.
Kind of, but we're not quite there yet. So for now, we have to be really thoughtful about when RCTs are truly needed and, importantly, when they're ethical.
Okay, which brings us right back to Dr. Califf's view on vaccine trials. What's the first dimension he considers?
The first one is about the evidence we already have. How strong is the proof that the basic vaccine works and is safe? It's benefit-risk balance.
Okay, so it depends if it's a brand new vaccine or one we know well.
Precisely. For a totally novel vaccine, something new from the ground up, Califf says placebo-controlled RCTs are non-negotiable, really. They're essential for that first proof.
That pivotal evidence.
Yeah, the core evidence to show it's safe enough and effective enough for approval.
Well, what about vaccines we already know save lives, ones with a proven track record?
That's where it gets ethically tricky. If a vaccine is known to prevent serious illness and its risks are generally acceptable, Dr. Califf argues it becomes unethical to give people a placebo.
Because you're knowingly withholding something beneficial.
Right. You'd be putting people in the placebo group at avoidable risk. Ethics boards, regulators, they likely wouldn't greenlight that kind of trial.
Makes total sense. Okay, his second angle. The riskiness of the disease itself if you don't get vaccinated. How does that factor in?
This is about context. If the disease itself isn't super common in a particular setting, or if there are good treatments available if you do get sick, then a placebo trial might be reasonable.
Even if there are long-term risks from the disease?
Potentially. He suggests that even with long-term risks from not treating something like hypertension, the short-term risk in a well-designed trial with very clear informed consent can sometimes be acceptable to gather vital data.
So it's a balancing act between trial risk and disease risk.
Yeah.
What's his third dimension? It's about who is put at risk.
Yes, and this is super relevant for vaccines. Think about something really contagious like measles or polio.
Right, affects more than just the person.
Exactly. If you're unvaccinated, You're not just risking your own health. You could be risking others, babies too young for the vaccine, people with weak immune systems.
So the risk in a placebo trial spills over into the community.
It can, yeah. That's quite different from, say, the shingles vaccine, where the benefit is mostly for the individual getting the shot.
Adds another layer of ethical consideration. Okay, fourth point. Those regular vaccine updates, like the flu shot every year.
Yeah, this is based on precedent. With flu vaccines, we accept updates to match new strains without redoing massive placebo trials each time. The basic vaccine platform is understood.
Because the underlying tech is known to be safe and effective.
Right. And Dr. Califf notes we've seen a similar path with the mRNA COVID vaccines, updating them for variants. There's quite a bit of enthusiasm for using that kind of platform tech for other vaccines, too, potentially allowing faster responses.
So leveraging existing knowledge. Got it. This final point tackles something called equipoise. That sounds complex.
Equipoise basically means there's genuine uncertainty among doctors, scientists, about whether a treatment is actually better than the alternative or placebo.
So experts aren't really sure which is better.
Or there's reasonable disagreement, yeah. Califf points out this uncertainty can vary. Patients might feel it, doctors might, experts might. And then he asks, what about when experts do recommend something, like a vaccine, but lots of people aren't taking it?
That sounds familiar. Does that mean there's equipoise then?
It's complicated. He contrasts measles and polio with COVID here. For measles polio, the evidence for benefit is overwhelming and the risk to others is high. So he argues there's less genuine equipoise, and the focus should be on getting vaccination rates up for community protection, like 92%.
Because the benefits are so clear-cut and the community risk is high? How about COVID?
With COVID, it's a bit different, he suggests. While the vaccines are very good at preventing severe disease and death, their effect on reducing transmission might be more modest or shorter-lived. And we see that many people not in high-risk groups or parents for their kids haven't been getting the updated shots, even with official recommendations. This suggests maybe more perceived equipoise or at least a different risk-benefit calculation happening in the wider population.
Interesting distinction. So pulling all these threads together, what are his specific conclusions on placebo trials for measles versus COVID?
For measles, he lands pretty firmly on placebo trials being likely unethical now. We have a great vaccine. The risks of the disease are serious, especially to communities. Withholding the vaccine intentionally is just too risky.
Hard to justify. And for COVID.
Here's where the nuance comes in. For updated booster vaccines, specifically in people who aren't at high risk, he thinks placebo-controlled trials are now reasonable, even advisable.
Keep rigorously checking effectiveness in that group.
Exactly. But for high-risk individuals where we already know the updated vaccines reduce hospitalization and death, placebo trials are much harder to justify ethically.
Because the benefit is clearer for them.
Right. And he also adds a note about needing large long-term studies to figure out if vaccines prevent long COVID. That's still a big question.
Okay, so definitely not a simple yes or no for COVID boosters. It depends who you're talking about. And his main takeaway sums that up.
Absolutely. His bottom line is that blanket statements saying placebo trials for vaccines are always good or always bad are just wrong.
Too simplistic.
Way too simplistic. Each vaccine, each situation needs its own careful look, considering all these dimensions we talked about. And this evaluation should be done by unbiased, non-political experts like those at the FDA working with the developers. It has to be about the science and the ethics.
It really pushes you to consider how we balance individual rights, protecting the community, and relying on rigorous science to guide us. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
As Dr. Califf pointed out in his blog, I also hope that some form of learning health systems, LHS, can soon be established to demonstrate that observational studies using real-world data can produce reliable and trusted scientific evidence for vaccines and other clinical interventions. Although LHS initiatives made limited progress following the 2013 National Academy of Medicine (NEM) report, I've found that generative AI, Gen AI, can truly accelerate progress toward the vision of transforming clinical trials through LHS-based evidence generation. It is very likely that LLM-based Gen AI will bring about the breakthrough in the clinical knowledge enterprise that healthcare has long been waiting for. I'm AJ Chen. See you in the next podcast.